It was a bright, sunny afternoon in a little place called Pinewood Lane. This wasn't a big city with tall buildings or noisy cars zooming around. No, Pinewood Lane was a quiet neighborhood where the houses sat close together and the streets were lined with green trees. You could hear birds chirping happily in the air, their little songs bouncing from branch to branch. Down the road, some kids were playing tag, laughing and running around like they didn't have a care in the world. Now, the sun was warm, the grass was green, and everything seemed just perfect, like a picture in a storybook. But guess what? It wasn't as perfect as it looked. Something sneaky was brewing, and it all started with a guy named Jake. Jake was new to Pinewood Lane. He'd just moved into a small house with white walls and a big front porch. It wasn't the fanciest house on the street, but Jake loved it. He was excited to make it his own. He had big plans like painting the door blue, fixing the creaky steps, and maybe even planting a little garden. But for now, he started small, really small. He decided to put a flower box on his window sill. You know what that is, right? It's just a little wooden box you stick under your window, fill with dirt, and pop some flowers in. Jake's box wasn't anything special. He scooped in some dark, crumbly soil and planted a few bright red flowers. They weren't big or fancy, just simple little blooms that made him smile when he looked at them. He stepped back, wiped his hands on his jeans, and thought, "This is a good start." Everything seemed fine. The sun was shining, the flowers were pretty, and Jake was happy. But here, where it gets interesting, someone else wasn't happy. Someone was watching Jake from across the street, and that someone didn't like what she saw, not one bit. Her name was Karen, and oh boy was she a character. You've probably heard of a Karen before, someone who's always bossing people around, acting like they're in charge of everything. Well, this Karen was the queen of that. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the head of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. That's a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood, like no loud music after dark or no messy yards. Karen loved rules. She loved them so much she carried a clipboard everywhere, scribbling notes about what everyone was doing wrong. To her, Pinewood Lane was her kingdom, and she was the boss. Karen had short, spiky hair and always wore a frown, like she'd just bitten into a sour lemon. Her house was perfect, too perfect maybe. The grass was cut just right, the bushes were trimmed into neat little squares, and her mailbox didn't have a single scratch. She liked things her way, and if they weren't her way, she'd let you know about it. Loudly. When Jake moved in, Karen didn't say hi or bring him cookies like a nice neighbor might. Nope. She squinted at him from her porch, her arms crossed, already deciding he was trouble. A new guy in her neighborhood, she didn't trust him. And when she saw that flower box on his window sill, her frown got even bigger. Now you might be wondering, what's wrong with a flower box? It's just some dirt and a few red flowers, right? Nothing to get mad about, but to Karen it was a big deal. See, the HOA had rules, tons of them. Rules about what color your house could be, how tall your grass could grow, and yep, even rules about what you could put on your window sill. Karen knew every single one of those rules by heart. She'd spent years making sure everyone followed them, and she wasn't about to let some new kid on the block mess things up. To her, Jake was a stranger who didn't know how things worked around here. He was a newbie, a nobody, someone who needed to learn the rules. And that flower box, in her mind, it was breaking one of those precious rules. She didn't even check the rulebook to be sure. She just decided it was wrong because it was new and she hadn't approved it. Jake didn't know any of this yet. He was too busy humming a little tune, watering his flowers with a small green can. The water sparkled in the sunlight as it splashed onto the dirt, making the red petals look even brighter. He didn't see Karen staring at him from her porch, her eyes narrow like a hawk watching a mouse. He didn't hear her muttering under her breath about troublemakers and disrespect. All he knew was that he liked his new house, his new flowers, and his new start. He was happy, plain and simple. But happiness doesn't always last when someone like Karen is around. Let's talk about Jake for a second. He wasn't a loud guy or a show-off. He was just Jake. He had messy brown hair that stuck up in the back and he wore old sneakers with holes in them. He didn't look like someone who'd cause a big fuss. If you saw him walking down the street, you might not even notice him. He was the kind of person who blended in quiet, easygoing, always ready with a friendly nod. But here's the thing, Jake wasn't as simple as he seemed. He had a little spark in him, something Karen didn't see. She thought he was clueless, just a guy who didn't know better. But Jake, he was smarter than that, a lot smarter. And Karen had no idea what was coming her way. Picture this, it's still that sunny afternoon and Jake standing there with his watering can. The kids down the street are still giggling, chasing each other around a big oak tree. The birds are still singing, hopping from one branch to another. Everything's peaceful except for Karen. She's packing on her porch now, her clipboard tucked under her arm. She's got her phone out, tapping her fingers on the screen like she's about to call someone important. Her lips are pressed tight and her eyes keep darting back to Jake's window sill. Those red flowers are like a red flag to her, waving in the breeze, mocking her perfect little world. She can't stand it. She's already decided Jake's a problem and she's going to fix it. Jake finishes watering and sets the can down. He stretches his arms, looks up at the blue sky and takes a deep breath. He's thinking about what to do next, maybe sweep the porch or grab a snack. He's not thinking about Karen or her rules. Why would he? He's new here. He doesn't even know the HOA exists yet. But that's the funny part. Karen thinks he's ignoring her on purpose, like he's trying to start a fight. She doesn't know he's just a guy who likes flowers. She's already made up her mind about him, and she's ready to make his life harder. So what do you think? Why was Karen so mad about a tiny flower box? Was it really about the rules, or was there something else bugging her? Maybe she didn't like new people, maybe she didn't like change, or maybe, just maybe, she had her own secrets she didn't want anyone to find out. Stick around, because this story, about to get wild. Jake's not the pushover Karen thinks he is, and she's in for a big surprise. What do you think her problem was? Tell me your guess and let's see how this all plays out. The sun was still shining bright that afternoon on Pinewood Lane. The birds were chirping, the kids were laughing down the street, and Jake was standing on his porch looking at his little flower box. Those red flowers were so pretty, sitting there in the dirt under his window. He liked them a lot, but then here came Karen. Oh boy, she was mad, really mad. She didn't walk over to Jake's house like a normal person. No, she strutted like a peacock showing off its feathers. Her shoes clicked on the sidewalk loud and fast. She had her phone in her hand, holding it tight like it was a toy gun or something. She wasn't coming to say hi. She was coming to start trouble. Karen stopped right in front of Jake's porch and pointed at his flower box. Her finger was sharp, like she was trying to poke a hole in the air. "That windowsill decoration is against HOA rules," she barked. Her voice was loud and mean, like a dog growling at a stranger. She stared at those red flowers like they'd done something awful, like they'd called her a bad name or stolen her lunch. To her, that little box of dirt and blooms was a big problem. Jake looked at her, surprised. He didn't know what to say at first. He just smiled, a small, friendly smile, and said, "Oh, I'll check the handbook later." His voice was soft, like he didn't want to fight. He figured that would be the end of it. But nope, Karen wasn't done, not even close. She huffed, her cheeks puffing out like a balloon about to pop. Then she puffed, letting the air out in a big angry whoosh. "You'll regret messing with me," she snapped. Her eyes were wide and wild, like she was ready to jump up and down and scream. She didn't like that Jake wasn't scared. She didn't like that he wasn't saying sorry or begging her to forgive him. To Karen, Jake was supposed to listen to her. She was the boss of Pinewood Lane, after all, at least that's what she thought. She ran the HOA and she made sure everyone knew it. If she said those flowers were bad, then they were bad. End of story, or so she thought. But Jake, he didn't argue. He didn't yell back or stomp his feet. He just stood there, calm as could be, maybe too calm. Most people would get mad if someone yelled at them like that. Most people would say, "Hey, leave me alone," or "What's your problem?" But not Jake. He kept that little smile on his face, like he knew something Karen didn't, and while she was busy shouting and pointing, Jake was doing something else. He was watching her, not in a creepy way, just in a quiet, careful way. His eyes were sneaky, picking up little things about Karen that she didn't even know he saw. For example, he noticed her car. Karen had a big, shiny car parked across the street. It was fancy, with silver paint that sparkled in the sun, but it wasn't parked right. Nope, it was all crooked, taking up 2 parking spots instead of 1. The front wheel was over the line, hogging extra space like it owned the road. Jake saw that, and he tucked it away in his brain. He didn't say anything about it, but he noticed. Then there was her yard. Karen always acted like her house was perfect, better than everyone else. But Jake spotted something funny. Behind one of her big, square bushes there was a pile of junk. Old boxes, a rusty bike, some torn bags, all stuff she didn't want anyone to see. She'd hidden it there, thinking no one would look. But Jake looked. He saw it all. These were little things, sure, just small bits and pieces. A crooked car, a messy pile of trash, not a big deal, right? But to Jake, they were like clues in a game. He didn't know why he was noticing them yet, but they stuck in his head. Every time Karen waved her arms or raised her voice, he saw something new. Like how her clipboard had papers falling out of it, all messy and crumpled. Or how her shoes had mud on them, even though she acted like she never got dirty. Little stuff, tiny stuff. But it was adding up like coins in a piggy bank. Jake didn't say a word about it, though. He kept his mouth shut and his eyes open. Karen didn't see any of this. She was too busy being mad. She thought she'd scared Jake good. She thought he'd run inside, rip that flower box down, and say, "Oh, Karen, you're right, I'm so sorry. That's what she wanted. That's what she was used to. People in Pinewood Lane didn't argue with her much. They'd see her coming with her clipboard and her frown, and they'd just nod and do what she said. She liked that. It made her feel big and important. So when she finished yelling at Jake, she smirked, a nasty little grin that said, "I win." Then she turned around and stormed off, her shoes clicking even louder than before. She muttered something under her breath as she went, something about teaching him a lesson. She was sure she'd put Jake in his place. But here's the funny thing. As she walked away, Jake didn't move. He didn't run inside or yank the flowers out of the box. He just stood there on his porch watching her go. His smile didn't go away. It stayed right where it was, small and quiet. And his eyes, they had a little spark in them. Not a loud, flashy spark, but a sneaky one. The kind you might miss if you weren't paying attention. Karen wasn't paying attention. She was too busy feeling like the queen of the neighborhood. She didn't turn around to see Jake's face. She didn't notice how he tilted his head a little, like he was thinking hard about something. She didn't wonder why he wasn't scared or mad or upset. And that's what makes you wonder. Was Jake really the pushover Karen thought he was? She saw him as a new guy, someone small and weak who didn't know the rules, someone she could boss around and scare with her loud voice and her HOA power. But Jake didn't act like that. He didn't fight, but he didn't give up either. He just watched. He stayed calm when most people would have gotten mad. He noticed things when most people would have ignored them. Why? What was he thinking? Did he have a plan? Or was he just good at staying cool, even when someone like Karen was yelling in his face? Let's think about Karen for a minute. She was loud and bossy, sure, but maybe she was nervous too. Maybe she didn't like Jake because he was new and new people made her feel shaky. She liked things the same, her rules, her way, her perfect little world. Jake's flower box wasn't just a box to her. It was a sign that things might change, and Karen didn't like change. She wanted everyone to follow her, to listen to her, to do what she said. When Jake smiled and said he'd check the handbook later, it bugged her a lot. Because it meant he wasn't jumping to obey her right away. It meant he wasn't afraid of her, and that made her huff and puff even more. So there they were, Karen stomping back to her house thinking she'd won, and Jake standing on his porch quiet as a mouse. The sun was still up, the birds were still singing, and those red flowers were still sitting pretty in their box. Nothing big had happened yet, not really, just some yelling and some starring, but it felt like something was starting, something sneaky, something exciting. Karen thought she was in charge, but Jake's calm face made you wonder, was he really just a guy with flowers? Or was there more to him than that? What do you think? Was Jake scared of Karen deep down? Or was he hiding something, something big? Stick around, because this story, about to get even better. The next day came fast. The sun popped up over Pinewood Lane, painting the sky all orange and pink. The birds were back, chirping their happy little songs, and the air smelled like grass and flowers. Jake was out on his porch again, just like yesterday. He had his green watering can in his hand, pouring water onto his red flowers. The water made a soft splashing sound as it hit the dirt, and the flowers perked up, looking bright and cheerful. Jake liked that. It made him feel good to see them growing. He was humming a little tune, something silly and quiet, when all of a sudden he heard her. Karen, oh boy, here she came again. This time she wasn't stomping over to his house. Nope, she was on her porch across the street, talking loud, really loud. Jake peeked up from his flowers and saw her holding her phone to her ear. Her voice was big and dramatic, like she was acting in a play or a movie. "Yes, 911, she said, practically shouting. "There's a criminal in my neighborhood. He's putting up illegal decorations, and I feel threatened." Jake stopped pouring water for a second. He raised one eyebrow, which is when you lift it up because you're confused or surprised. A criminal, illegal decorations, threatened by his flowers, those little red blooms sitting in a box. That was crazy. He almost laughed out loud like a big ha-ha. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed quiet and did something smart. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and hit the record button. See, Jake wasn't dumb. He knew Karen was making a fuss and he figured it might be good to have proof. So he held his phone low where she couldn't see it and let it record her voice. The little red dot blinked on his screen, catching every word she said. Karen didn't notice a thing. She was way too busy packing back and forth on her porch, her shoes clacking on the wood. She waved her arms around like she was swatting flies or directing traffic. "Hurry, officers," she yelled into the phone. "He's dangerous." Dangerous? Jake, the guy watering flowers in old sneakers, that was nuts, but Jake didn't say anything. He just kept watering his plants, letting the water drip, drip, drip into the dirt. He acted like nothing was wrong, like he didn't even hear her, but he heard. Oh, he heard everything. Karen kept going. She was so loud the whole street could probably hear her. "He's breaking the rules," she shouted. "He's got that awful flower box up and it's not allowed. I'm scared for my life." Scared for her life over flowers? Jake's eyebrow went up again. He shook his head a tiny bit like he couldn't believe what he was hearing, but he didn't stop her. He didn't yell back or tell her to be quiet. He just let her talk and his phone kept recording. The birds kept chirping, the sun kept shining, and Jake kept watering. It was like he was in his own little world, even with Karen making a big scene right across the street. Now here, where things get really weird and really cool. While Karen was yelling into her phone, something else was happening. Down the street, 2 police cars were coming. You know how police cars look, black and white, with lights on top that flash red and blue when they're in a hurry. These ones weren't flashing yet, but they were moving slow and steady, rolling closer and closer. The tires made a soft rumbling sound on the road and the engines hummed. Jake saw them out of the corner of his eye. He didn't turn his head or act surprised. He just kept watering like it was no big deal. But Karen, she didn't see them at all. She was too busy waving her arms and shouting about criminals and danger. She thought she was the one calling the cops and they'd come running to help her. Oh boy, was she wrong. Let's talk about those police cars for a second. They weren't speeding or making a lot of noise. They were just cruising along like they already knew where they were going. And here's the big twist. They weren't coming for Jake. Nope, not even a little bit. Karen thought she was so smart, dialing 911 to get Jake in trouble. She thought the police would show up, see his flower box, and say, "You're right, Karen, this guy's bad news." But that's not what was happening. Those cars were already on their way before she even picked up her phone, and they had a different target in mind. Can you guess who? Yep, Karen herself, but she didn't know that yet, not one bit. Jake kept his cool. He didn't smirk or laugh or give anything away. He just poured water on his flowers, letting the dirt get nice and wet. His phone was still recording, tucked in his hand, catching every wild thing Karen said. She was still packing, still yelling. "He's ruining our neighborhood," she cried. "Somebody needs to stop him." She sounded like she was in a big panic, like Jake's flowers were the worst thing she'd ever seen. But Jake didn't panic. He didn't even look mad. He looked calm, too calm maybe, like he knew something she didn't, and he did. Oh, he totally did. See, Jake had a secret, a little one at first, but it was growing bigger by the minute. He wasn't just some random guy who liked flowers. He wasn't just a new neighbor who moved to Pinewood Lane because he liked the houses or the trees. No, Jake had a reason for being there, a big reason. He wasn't the kind of person Karen thought he was. She saw him as a newbie, a nobody, someone she could boss around. But Jake wasn't a nobody. He was sneaky smart, and he'd come to this neighborhood with a plan. What kind of plan? Well, we're not all the way there yet, but let's just say Karen was about to find out, and it wasn't going to be pretty for her. The police cars got closer. They were only a few houses away now, rolling down the street nice and slow. Jake saw them, but he didn't flinch. He didn't drop his watering can or run inside. He just kept going like it was any other day. Karen was still on her phone, still talking to 911. Yes, it's an emergency," she said. "You need to get here fast." She thought she was in charge, like always. She thought she'd won again, just like yesterday when she yelled at Jake and walked away smirking. But this time, things were different. The cops weren't coming because of her call. They were already coming, and they were coming for her. Jake's secret was starting to peek out, like the sun coming up over the hill. It wasn't all clear yet, but little bits were showing. Why was he so calm? Why wasn't he mad at Karen for calling him a criminal? Why didn't he care that she was dialing 911? Most people would freak out if someone called the police on them. Most people would yell or argue or try to explain. But Jake didn't. He just watered his flowers and recorded her with his phone. That's not normal, right? That's weird, and it makes you think maybe Jake wasn't scared because he wasn't in trouble. Maybe he knew something Karen didn't. Maybe he was ready for whatever was coming next. Karen kept packing. Her voice was getting higher and squeakier, like a balloon losing air. "He's right across the street," she told the 911 person. "You can't miss him." She pointed at Jake again, even though no one on the phone could see her. She was so caught up in her big show that she didn't hear the police cars. She didn't hear the rumble of their tires or the low hum of their engines. She was too busy being loud, too busy being mad. But Jake heard. He heard it all. And he saw it too. The cars were almost here now, just a house away. He didn't say a word, though. He didn't need to. His secret was about to do the talking for him. So what do you think? Why was Jake so chill? What was his secret? And why were those police cars really coming? Stick around, because this is getting good. Karen's about to get a big surprise, and Jake's little flower box is just the start of it. The police cars came rolling down Pinewood Lane, and then bam, they stopped fast. Their tires made a loud screeching sound, like a scream on the pavement right in front of Karen's house. Dust puffed up from the road, and the cars sat there, big and serious. Karen was still on her porch, yelling into her phone. She'd been talking to 911, calling Jake a criminal because of his flower box. But when those cars stopped, she froze. Her mouth was open mid-sentence and her phone stayed stuck to her ear. She looked like a statue, her eyes wide and confused. "Wait, what?" she stammered, her voice all shaky. She didn't know what was happening, not yet. The two officers climbed out of the cars. They were tall and wore dark uniforms with shiny badges on their chests. Their boots thumped on the ground as they walked straight toward Karen's porch. Not Jake's house, Karen. She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe it. Across the street, Jake was still on his porch. He'd been watering his flowers, but now he put the green watering can down on the steps. He leaned against the railing, super relaxed, and a tiny grin started to grow on his face. It wasn't a big, loud smile, just a little one, like he knew something fun was about to happen. And oh boy, it was. One of the officers stepped up to Karen. He had a deep voice, calm but strong. "Ma'am," he said, looking right at her, "we've had multiple complaints about you." Karen's phone slipped a little in her hand, but she didn't hang up. She just stared at him. The officer kept going. "Noise violations," he said. "That means you've been too loud too many times. People called us about it." Karen's eyebrows shot up. "And illegal parking," he added. "Your car been taking up 2 spots, and that's not allowed." Then he paused and said, "Oh yeah, and those unpaid fines piling up. Fines are like bills you have to pay when you break rules, and Karen had a bunch she hadn't taken care of. They were stacking up like a tower of blocks ready to fall." Karen's jaw dropped. Her mouth hung open so wide you could see her teeth. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. "Me," she screeched, her voice high and squeaky. "But I'm the victim here." She pointed across the street at Jake, her finger shaking. "He's the one breaking rules. He's got that awful flower box. He's the problem." She was mad, really mad. Her face turned red and she waved her arms like she was trying to fly away. She thought the police were there for Jake. She thought they'd listen to her 911 call, march over to his house and tell him off. She thought she was the hero, saving the neighborhood from his little red flowers. But nope, she was so wrong. That's when Jake finally spoke. He'd been quiet this whole time, just watching and grinning. But now he straightened up from the railing and took a step forward. "Actually," he said, his voice nice and clear, "I'm Officer Jake Dawson, undercover." He reached into his pocket, his jeans pocket, the one with a little hole in it, and pulled out something shiny. It was a badge, a police badge, all silver and